Okay, look, I'm sure you've been keeping up on the flu epidemic, right? The flu pandemic, sir. Of course. How could I miss it? Okay, pandemic, whatever. Henderson waved a dismissive hand. Thing is, these death toll reports with their color coded maps showing the hardest hit areas, they're not as precise as you'd think. That's what's causing the riots to break out? Wait, are they lying? Why would they do that? James's smile faded, confusion settling in. Now, I didn't say that, son. Oh, okay, so people have found out it's a lot worse than they're telling us, right? I guess I can see why that would cause some riots, sir. I didn't say that either. Henderson raised his hands, cutting off Benton's speculation. Then what exactly are you saying, sir? Well, if you'd let me finish, I'll tell you, son. Just give me a second. Henderson stood and walked over to Benton's liquor cabinet as if it were his own. He poured out a couple more drinks, then sat back down, sliding a glass toward James. All right now, this gets a little complicated, but I think you'll understand. He took a sip, settling in. I'm listening, James replied. Okay. Turns out a good friend of mine has a boy working in the IT department at the CDC. He reached out to me today with some troubling information about the flu death tolls. What kind of information? James asked, now fully attentive. Well, this boy works IT, but took it upon himself to write a program. He used some global mapping software to plot the exact addresses of the people who have died from this flu. Sir, how's that even possible? There are millions upon millions. I'm no computer expert, but from what I gather, he's pulling death postings from the UN's mainframe and feeding them into this program. Don't ask me how, but apparently it works. Henderson took a long drink. I see, but why bring it to you? Why not just turn it over to the networks, or even the CDC? Well, my friend knows a little about the MSB program we've got going with Hayden. Wait, sir. The MSB program? Yeah, the microsurgical bots, James, the one you brought to me? Of course, sir, I know what it is. I'm just surprised. How does he know about it? I'm not sure, okay? He just does. Henderson finished his drink. But let's leave it at that. James nodded. All right, sir, I understand. The thing that caught his attention was what he saw when he mapped the deaths. So he showed me. And get this. In cities hit the hardest, there's a clear 5-mile radius around these clinics where people just aren't dying. Somehow they're surviving. Really? James said, incredulous. Yeah. On the map, deaths show up as tiny red dots, and when you zoom out, it's a red cloud over major cities, except for a large, obvious black dot over the clinics themselves. What? Do you think he's injecting those people with the MSBs? Do you think that's what they're doing? No, son, I don't. Henderson shook his head and took out a small flask, topping off his glass. As far as we know, the MSBs don't do anything to stop that virus. Sir, I just don't get it. If he's not using the MSBs, then what's the problem? Listen, it's probably not the case, but hear me out. Henderson took another sip. You know the letter Hayden sent out, right? Yes, sir. I had it forwarded to your office. Well, after I saw that mapping program, I had my staff try to reach Hayden, wanted to discuss it with him, but they kept getting bounced to the fundraising department, so I called myself. How did that go, sir? James asked, but he already knew the answer. Well, after talking to a few people, I finally got the organization's office manager, Mrs. Stone. She's the reason I'm here now. What did she say, sir? I sort of bluffed, said our contract required full disclosure of all foundation operations. She tried to brush me off, saying the World Wellness Project isn't tied to the MSB program in any way. She pointed out that we hadn't taken much interest in the World Wellness Project when they'd requested assistance, and if we had, Hayden would have kept us in the loop with daily updates. James frowned. That doesn't sound good. No, it wasn't. Henderson shook his head. So I told her if Hayden didn't contact me, we'd take matters into our own hands. I explained, politely mind you, that a few phone calls could have the Argentine government shut them down in no time. And what did she say to that? She said she was sure that wouldn't be necessary, and assured me she'd let Hayden know to contact me as soon as possible. James allowed a slight smile. That's good, right? Well, I waited all day for his call. It never came, so I decided to take action. What, you followed through? No, of course not. What would I say? Please shut down this organization that's saving thousands from the flu. Henderson shook his head. No, I didn't. Instead, I talked to some of our lab people working with the MSB program. Asked if there was any way to determine what they're really doing at those clinics. Dr. Bramstead, the lead doctor, said that if they could run tests on someone before and after visiting the clinic, it would help. But without it, anything they say is just speculation. That makes sense, though, right? James asked, his voice uncertain. Henderson shook his head, the weight of experience in his tone. Yeah, it makes sense and all, but the downside, son, is that not everything works out the way you plan for it. Benton's expression shifted, a trace of real fear flickering in his eyes. Sir, are you saying that we started the riots then? To tell you the truth, James, I'm not so sure how, but it sure looks like we did. But why? Henderson exhaled, frustration leaking through. It's not like I wanted to, son. Sometimes things just spiral out of control. So what happened, Earl? He glanced down, shoulders heavy. I don't know. I contacted one of the OICs, officers in charge of our Black Ops department, and told him what I needed done. Next thing I know, I'm watching chaos unfold live on television. I mean, I made it perfectly clear what was needed, though, in hindsight, maybe I should have just sent a kid down there with a little cash and gotten some volunteers. Henderson shook his head again. But like I said, I have no idea what really happened. All I know is it didn't go well. James stared, breath caught. Holy. Yeah, that about covers it, Henderson said, taking another drink. So what can we do? Henderson leaned in, his voice urgent. Okay. Shortly after the riots broke out, the networks started digging up everything they could on the Foundation and our friend, Dr. Hayden. Now, I'm not saying they'll find out about the MSB program, not directly, but I'm pretty sure they'll piece something together. James shook his head. I'm not going to say anything, sir. Oh, I know you wouldn't. I just want you up to speed. If I hadn't come over here, I know you wouldn't have messed it up. But just to be safe, it's best we're on the same page, singing the same tune, so to speak. Of course, yeah. So if you're approached, Henderson continued, just act like you're not sure. Say something like, I do know we dealt with him on his supposed Feed the World project. Then tell them it'll take some time, but you'll look into it and see if anything ever came of that, okay? James nodded, a hint of a smile. Sure, I see. Throw them off by giving them a little something, right? Exactly. Play a little dumb. They expect that from us. James's voice grew serious. But, sir, what if they do find out about the MSBs somehow? Henderson stood, placing his empty glass down, and offered a sly smile. What are MSBs, James? He feigned ignorance. James stood as well, picking up the hint. Okay, I get it. Look, worst comes to worst. We deny everything, Henderson said, heading toward the door. Tell the people we'll put together a special investigatory commission to look into the allegations, and in a couple months, it'll all be forgotten. Gotta love this country, right? He flashed a wry smile. James managed a weary grin. Yeah, you're right, boss. Henderson paused, glancing over his shoulder as he opened the door. Now, don't you go wearing yourself out with that little thing you've got in the bedroom there, son. His tone lightened, though the words were still sharp with mischief. Maybe when you're done, I'll take a turn, huh? Yeah. By all means, don't you go wearing me all out, James. Brenda's voice drifted in from the hallway just as Henderson reached the door. The Secretary of State caught her eye, holding her gaze a moment before tossing out his parting shot. Brenda responded with a polite, knowing smile, giving her head a small shake for his amusement. James, clearly startled by her sudden appearance, closed the apartment door behind Henderson and turned to her. Hey, now, you know I wouldn't do anything like that, he said, making his way toward her. She arched an eyebrow, playful. Give me away, or wear me out? A broad, mischievous smile spread across her face. Either, he replied, sliding his hands to her hips and gently pulling her close, steering her backward toward the bedroom. Brenda's voice dropped to a teasing whisper. You could try the wearing me out thing, I guess. The two slipped away together, laughter and affection filling the quiet that followed Henderson's exit. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to our channel for more in this series and many other stories we know you'll love. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an update.